Okay, thanks. Can you hear me now, Kara? Okay, because I don't see that share screen button here now. Oh, okay.
We're starting right now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Art on History with local artist Gail Rosenbloom Kaplan. Just before we begin, I wanted to draw everyone's attention to the upcoming events. If you open up your camera, you will see there is a QR code on your screen. So if you open up your phone's camera and scan that code, you can register for these events. We have on March 14th, a free event, Con and Ford with Mike Skinner. And on March 21st, Unauthorized Immigration and Jewish Detroit with Ashley Johnson Bavery. And again, if you open up the camera app on your phone and you scan that QR code, it will take you right to our website so you can register for these programs. As always, we are supported by Michigan Council for the Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts. As I said before, we are very blessed to have with us this evening Gail Kaplan, who's going to be speaking to us not only about her very interesting and storied career in art, but as well as the Kindertransport quilts that she has worked with. And right now, I am going to turn it over to Gail. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? I think I'm ready. I am truly blessed to have the opportunity to bring together both my love for community and my passion for art. When Barbara Cohn, our vice president, and Catherine Kangany, our executive director of the Jewish Historical Society, asked me to share my art with you, I contemplated how my work as a community artist fit with the mission statement of the Jewish Historical Society of Michigan, which states, it's not working. It's not working. Kara, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
Oh, could you hear me all along because it wasn't working?
Yes, I could hear you.
Okay, for some reason my, so I'm going to share my screen again and for some reason it wasn't moving the screen. I'm trying to move I apologize, everybody. Hold on one second. What? I'm supposed to be able to move this. Okay. All right, here we go. We're starting over. Okay. I'm truly blessed to have the opportunity to bring together both my love for community and my passion for art. When Barbara Cohn, our vice president, and Catherine Kangany, the executive director of the Michigan Jewish Historical Society, invited me to share my art with you, I contemplated how my work fit with your mission statement. Through the past, we understand our present and actively shape our future. Through my presentation, I will share how an exhibition of Jewish art from our collective past, from a community annihilated by the Holocaust, inform my mission and destiny as a Jewish artist. My foray in formal education into Jewish art began in 1973 when I was a sophomore at the School of Art at the University of Michigan. I wanted to find a summer internship, and with the help of my mom, a typist extraordinaire, I sent over 40 resumes and cover letters, all well before the computer age. Can you imagine my mother typing those letters? Miraculously, I received 2 offers. The first from the Frick Collection, and the second from the Jewish Museum on 92nd and 5th Avenue. You guessed, with my mother's strong encouragement, I went to the Jewish Museum, whose collection was originally housed in the library of the Jewish Theological Seminary, but moved to the Felix and Frida Warburg Mansion in 1947. It is here where I became immersed in museum operations. Each week, I was assigned a different department, from membership to education to conservation to the gift shop. But it was here in the basement vault that I had my most memorable experience. It was here that I was polishing the silver Rimonim, jewels embellished, which were the finials placed over the Torah handles. With the impending outbreak of World War II, this collection had been sent from Danzig, Poland, to the JTF in 1938 for safekeeping, with the agreement that they had 15 years to reclaim their Judaica. Sadly, the community did not survive, and this collection found its permanent home at the Jewish Museum, where it remained on these shelves in storage for over 35 years, until my summer internship in 1973, when we were curating the collection for the first public exhibition. I vividly remember my hands trembling as I was holding this very breastplate, realizing that I was touching something from a lost community. It was then that I experienced the power, the beauty, and the appreciation of the ritual objects that define our traditions as artworks that could sensitize and teach the pain and the history of the Holocaust. It was at this exact moment that I remember making a promise to myself that through my journey as an artist, I would find a way to help others to experience their Judaism through the arts. In 2009, I became involved in an art installation, which is a testament to the power of art to heal. The Kindertransport memory quilts were created in 1988 by 65 artists from around the world. Who were these artists? What brought them together? The answer is a public broadcast to honor a man, Nicholas Winton. Nicholas had been working in London as a 28-year-old stockbroker and was about to go skiing on a holiday. Set for a career in banking, a friend asked him to please stop first in Prague. This visit brought him face to face with the thousands of youngsters caught up in the threat of war. Working around the clock, he established an organization which rescued 669 of the children from Czechoslovakia. They were to become part of the 10,000 children from Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic, whose parents signed them up to be put on trains and boats and transported to safety in Great Britain, where foster families would await them. These children were between the ages of 7 months and 17. You can see they had name tags around their necks to match them up with their new families. It was a heartbreaking decision for the parents and children desperately hoping to be reunited. Nicholas was a modest man, and once his mission was accomplished, he returned to his life and livelihood. He did not talk about his rescue efforts. It took 50 years for his story to be told. His wife was cleaning the attic where she found a scrapbook with pages with pictures of the children. She gave this album to the newspaper first, who then gave it to the TV station. And the following clip, "This is Your Life," was shown on BBC video.
All the letters. Back here is the list of all the children. This is Vera Dumont, not Vera Gissing. We did find her name on his list. Vera Gissing is with us here tonight. Hello, Vera. And I should tell you that you are actually sitting next to Nicholas Winton. And it was just so wonderful, so terribly, terribly touching. Can I ask, is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? If so, could you stand up, please?
The story went viral, and that very night, the quilts were conceived. Anita Gross, a young woman in the United States, had always wanted her father to share his story, but it took this broadcast for Hannes Gross, now a practicing psychiatrist in Indianapolis, for him to share that he was one of the kinder that Nicholas saved. At this moment, Anita and her mother, an experienced quilter, decided to create a quilt that would share the story of the Kindertransport. And they reached out to other kinder who were now children, not children, but seniors in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Each kinder who signed up received a white patch of fabric, and in a matter of months, the kinder returned the squares, accompanied with their written stories for a book. This quilt square is the one that they created for Hannes Gross. It represents the Night of Broken Glass, Kristallnacht, November 9th, 1938. The broken glass, the broken star. Stitched together, these quilts document the history of the largest rescue effort of the war and one of the few bright lessons of the Holocaust. I had first learned about the quilts at a National Council of Jewish Women lectures given by Mary Silber, who you see is standing next to me in this slide. She was a quilt collector, and it was at a chance meeting with one of the kinder survivors, Hans Wyman, that I was asked if I could find a permanent home for the quilts. Initially, I said, "Oh no, I can't do that, it's too expensive." And immediately, Hans Wyman and Mary Silber pulled out, in those days we still used checkbooks, and they each gave me $1,000 and said, "This will help cover the cost." Well, keeping my promise to help others experience their Judaism through the arts, I embarked on this journey with Hans Wyman as my partner. Together, we wanted to teach the next generation how the kindness of others, tikkun olam, can change the world. We understood that each quilt square had a story to tell, and with the advent of new technology, museum exhibitions were becoming more interactive. And the idea occurred to us to recreate and record the voices of the children. I'm going to play some of these voices for you for the quilt squares.
I have my doll and the shiny red suitcase Mother and Father bought me yesterday. But I'm on the train and they're outside on the platform. I feel like crying. Father is holding on to my mother's shoulder and trying to smile as they wave goodbye. I know they would rather be with me and that I must be brave. My stomach feels funny. Is London anything like Brussels? What will it be like to live with people I don't know, who speak another language? Will I ever see my home over our store again? Will I ever see my parents again?
Edith Mesh Reisfeld was awakened on November 9, 1938, Kristallnacht, at the sound of breaking glass. She fled with her family that night, and after a week of terrible uncertainty and fear of arrest, arrived in Belgium. There, they arranged for Edith to escape to England on a Kindertransport train. The family was reunited 7 years later.
I have my doll.
It was,
Ruth Amster Meador.
I was only 7 and recall little of the circumstances of my leaving Kassel, Germany in January of 1939 for Amsterdam. What I do remember are the postcards we were given to write to our parents. They were lined for us younger children and pre-addressed by our parents. It was these postcards that crossed from Holland to Germany to England and finally to America, telling my father in the US of my whereabouts. My present family, husband and 2 sons, helped me make this square. It is to remember all who died and all who lived, and to thank all who helped. I am grateful to Great Britain for taking this handful of children, and to the United States for the opportunities to pursue my life.
Ruth Amster.
I'm not going to play all of the voices, but here you see a child waving goodbye to her grandmother. In the story that she submitted, she said her parents did not come to the train station because they could not bear to see her leave.
Dear Grandma,
In this square, Alexander Gordon has the word chai, and he says not only does it spell the chet yud, the word, but the 2 letters together look like a cat, and like a cat, he felt like he had 9 lives.
There were so many of us on the train, with only 2 ladies to look after everyone. Helping with the smaller children took my mind off the sadness of having to leave my parents. Now, here I sit on my suitcase, waiting, my name tag around my neck. Oh, this is what little calves must feel like when they are separated from their protecting mother and delivered into human hands and left to human mercy. Not for the first time, I pray to God that all may be well. With this square, I thank all our humans who were more than merciful, those who saved us and those who cared for us and brought us up with so much love and compassion. In Czech, we have a fitting expression, to black cloud boo, which means, may the Lord pay you back. There were so
The individual squares were beautiful and heart-wrenching, but for the kinder themselves, their personal artworks became healing expressions for them. In looking for a home for these quilts, I first went to Yad Vashem and the Washington Holocaust Museum. They could not accept the quilts for permanent display because their mission statement only allowed works of art from the war period. So today, after finding and gaining acceptance at the Zekelman family campus, you can see these on permanent display. And for me, designing this installation also brought me into the realm of fundraising in order to not only frame and install the quilts, but to create a website allowing access to the exhibit for schools and individuals around the world. We also used the money that was raised to republish the book, which is available. This quilt exhibit was a predecessor for another project that I became involved in at the Holocaust Center. An article in the New York Times was published about a competition from the Anne Frank Center, USA in New York City. The mission of the center is to spread the message of Anne's diary, to promote respect for all humanity, and to educate against hatred. The life of the 150-year-old tree that you see on the screen was coming to an end. This tree gave Anne hope, and the Anne Frank Center wanted to take grafts from the tree and plant the saplings in other places in the United States that would inspire hope and tolerance for future generations. Myself, along with Faggy Weiss, the librarian of the Holocaust Center, and my sister in cohort, Ann Klissman, we wrote a proposal on behalf of the Zekelman Holocaust Center. And as you can see on the image on the right, we were fortunate to be selected. Other locations included the White House Gardens, the World Trade Center Memorial Gardens in New York, and the Boston Commons. What I loved about the Boston Commons, which is the first national park, the oldest and first national park in America, but this proposal was submitted by a 12-year-old young girl as part of her community service for her bat mitzvah. The quilts and the sapling showed me the power of nature and of art to heal. And this took me to Children's Hospital of Michigan, where I worked for 9 years up until the pandemic. I'm going to share with you some of the work that I did there, much of it having to do with healing. The staff at the outpatient asthma clinic approached me about a project for their building. They were having a hard time getting kids to come for their shots and treatments. After all, they'd been in school all day, and the last thing they wanted to do was come wait in the doctor's office for hours. So they asked about a project where we could actually have them create the art for their clinic and give ownership to them for the space that they would be coming to. The theme of the project was to step up to asthma care. And what I tried to teach the kids that stepping up, it wasn't just a gym shoe, but it was a shoe to represent stepping up and taking responsibility for their own health. This installation is 4 feet by 8 feet. You can see the seams in it. It's actually kind of like a puzzle, and the actual pieces are 8 inches by 10 inches. And every week the kids would come and work on this. But not only did they create the steps walking up on the project, on the installation, but they were also encouraged to create a work of art, a shoe, to take home for their walls. What happened was, not only did we create this permanent installation, but the students and the patients started coming week after week to the clinic, but they brought their siblings and their parents because they too wanted to create their shoe art to take home. Working in the hospital, I had the opportunity to work with several patients who received transplants. Gregory was in the hospital for 366 days getting a heart transplant. And the staff was having a challenge with him because all he wanted to do was play video games throughout the night and sleep by day. Well, they brought me in to work with him, and we created sand art portraits of his favorite players. This is the Greek Freak who played for the Milwaukee Bucks. And on the slide showing you the pink artwork, that was a piece from a child who received a liver transplant, and it says, "Cancer is no match for me. My liver is now disease-free. I beat it with a transplant, and now I'm back to being me." What a beautiful artwork. It was a healing piece for both of these patients. While I was at the hospital, I also had the opportunity to meet a young patient from Haiti. He was one of the children that our very own Mitch Album has brought here for medical treatment. And through that experience, I met Mitch, who actually interviewed me for a TV program that he does called The Heart of Detroit. And he invited me if I could work last summer at that camp that he sponsors at a place called Say Play Detroit. This is a place that's supported not only by Mitch, but by the Detroit Tigers and the Lions and the Pistons. And the kids that came here, many of the kids only wanted to play sports. They didn't want to do art. But trust me, when they saw that we were doing portraits of Kobe Bryant in gym shoes, they all joined in. Art and healing in our own Jewish community. This is a project that was done with the Cancer Thrivers, part of Jewish Family Service. This is a 54-inch piece. The tree itself, the tree of life, representing life, has the Hebrew words lech lecha, which means go forth. The border around the piece are images, those are images of the 7 species, and all of the survivors worked on this piece together. And like a puzzle, it was then put together and framed. I was invited by the University of Michigan, Gifts of Art at the University Hospital, to be part of a show there. And at that time, the Metropolitan Museum was having a show for Edward Munch for the painting The Scream. And that's where I got the idea to do my portrait series. So the series was on the left are the different cubes that I did. I was not given wall space, I was given pedestals to work with. And the piece on the right is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So she was added to the collection more recently. In my studio, I work in a variety of mediums. And another project that I have spent a lot of time with, I have a Mosaic partner, Donnie Kassir. With a grant from the Federation of Metropolitan Detroit, from the Jewish Federation, they were interested in bringing the arts into the curriculum through a grant called the Air, I think I might have just said, the Air and DeRoy. And the whole purpose was kids have a hard time going to school all day and then wanting to come to Hebrew school. But through working on this mosaic, we were able to present their curriculum in an artistic way. And this piece is a 17-foot wide piece that is presently in the lobby of Shared Tzedek at the religious school. And the theme is mitzvot. So every week the kids would come and work on this and we would talk about the different mitzvahs. And in the Torah image, you see the Hebrew writing, mitzvah gorer mitzvah, which means one mitzvah brings forth another. You also see Shabbat candles, the mitzvah of lighting candles. You see a JNF box, you see the sukkah. These are all things in the Torah that we learn. And so through the artwork, we were able to reinforce this learning. This is a piece that was done for Temple Israel. Many of us go to their Friday night services in the spring and summer. And it says here, make for me a sanctuary and amongst you I will dwell. And like the sand art piece we did with the Cancer Thrivers, again, we use the image of the 7 species which describe the land of Israel. The Adler family was celebrating their son's bar mitzvah. In honor of that, rather than a dance party, they wanted to do something a little different. So they invited their guests to work with the residents at Fleischman, and we created this entryway mosaic, which says in English and Hebrew, rise before the aged and bring beauty to those who are wise. This is one of my favorite pieces because of the story. The Koval apartments are in Oak Park, similar to Fleischman and Heckman and Meir and Prentice, where our older residents live. Some people just can't live in an apartment with a large dining room. They needed a smaller environment. So Warren Koval, a philanthropist in our community, took 3 floors of an apartment building and created 3 apartments, each one having 12 bedrooms. And then they each had an individual dining room and living room. And one of the residents, when she passed away, they had no children. She had no children, but the person handling her estate wanted to do something for the building that had given so much to her. And so we created 3 mosaics, one with the theme of Fiddler on the Roof, one Shalom Aleichem, and here the one with the rabbi holding the Torah. And it was while Donnie, my partner, and I were working with the residents that Sydney, a 92-year-old or young woman, she was really young at heart, she said to me, Gail, I saved 2 Torahs. I said, Sydney, what do you mean you saved 2 Torahs? And she went on to tell me that they were coming. And I looked at my mosaic partner and he looked at me and we looked at her and she said, the Germans, they were coming and we buried our Torahs. We had 2 Torahs and after the war, we went back and we found them. And today, one of them is in a synagogue in the United States and one of them is in Bnei Brak, Israel. Truly, this was a work of art that truly was a healing experience for her as she talked about what she went through. Our mosaics are all over the city in public buildings as well as the Jewish community. This is a project that was worked on by 1,200 young athletes who came from Maccabi. And when they weren't playing their games, they were working on this. And this mosaic is about eight or nine, actually it's 10 feet wide. And we did it in a 4-day period because we had so many kids working on it. This is quite a story. This is the holiday panels. We did every holiday, and we worked on this with 10 synagogues with the 6th and 7th graders. And we worked at the Heckman building where we created this mosaic for the dining hall, and it's all the different holidays. And if you remember in 2008, there was the fire at Heckman. This is the only thing that survived the fire. After we contacted ArtPack, they came, they took down the mosaic, they cleaned it and stored it for 2 years until the new building opened. It's really amazing. I have run into some kids who are in college now who worked on this, and they still remember working together with the residents. It was really fun because, you know, the older residents, they can't cut the glass because the glass requires tile cutters, and with arthritis as we get older, we don't always have the strength. So the kids would do the cutting, but the residents, they did the gluing. And then there was always that group of kids that just did the talking and the providing snacks for everybody. So it was really a great project. Along with the community pieces, we also have done, Donnie and I, personal Judaica for schools, synagogues, and every year at Tamarack, we make menorahs with the kids who are in the specialty division. I mentioned that we've done things in public buildings. This was a piece that was done at the Bloomfield Hills High School for their new lobby, and it was funded and inspired by one of the students who passed away. Her family did this in her memory. They said that Dolores Silverstein said that her daughter loved playing the bells, and that was a happy time in her life, and so they wanted to donate something in her memory. And it was a great project done just a few years ago. Barbara Cohn, who you know is our vice president, soon to be president of the Jewish Historical Society. She's an amazing, amazing inspiration for all of us. And it was Barbara who started the library program at the Detroit Public Library, where they do tours of the building and the collection. And she contacted me that the children's reading room needed some uplifting. And together we created a project where we worked with 9 schools for 9 panels to change the feel of the room and to really make it an inviting place for the children to read. This particular mosaic is the Earth Mosaic. Each one of the mosaics was based on a curriculum, and this one is Earth Studies. And this one was done at Pasture Elementary. We had to be creative in order to fund these projects. And Marcy Feldman, an amazing woman in our community who started the Pasture Alumni Group, I contacted her to see if her school would be interested in working on this. And of course they were, but how do we get the funding for it? And Marcy said that they had an active group, and she contacted Penny Plumenstein, our very own Penny, who was also a graduate from Pasture Elementary. And together, the alumni paid for this installation. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I just want to tell you, to make these pieces more interactive, we have 7 things that are hidden in every mosaic, 7 images that represent literacy. So one of them is a pencil, which represents writing, a light bulb represents new ideas, the number of the Dewey Decimal, all kinds of things are hidden here. So for those of you who have not been to the Detroit Public Library on a tour, it's an amazing, amazing art installation to see. I believe this is the last of the mosaics I'm going to share with you. Children's Hospital of Michigan opened a new building a few years ago. We worked with 18 schools to create art for the building so that when patients in the neighboring school districts would come and use the hospital, they would not feel like it was a sterile environment, but something that where they created the artwork. So the 18 panels are on the 3 floors, and the theme was nature, because we know the power of nature to heal. Each design was done by the individual kids in the school. I think one of my favorite ones is the one that shows the little girl wearing an eye patch. That represents the 4 seasons and different, the eye patch, she had surgery, and the image below, which says love, the child has no hair, to represent a child who had cancer. So it was really charming how the kids came up with their designs. So art and healing. This is one of my artworks that I did prior to working in Mosaics. I worked in clay. I did realism in clay. And the word in French for realism is trompe-l'oeil, which means fools the eye. And although this looks like a flag waving in the wind, it's actually made from clay. And it's created kind of like a puzzle because it gets put together on a plate on the back. And this piece is part of a collection that was accepted into the Arts and Embassy program. I did this after 9/11, and every American ambassador takes with them a collection of American art to the country that they're going to. This has been in Brazil and Barbados, and today it's on the walls of my studio. This is not anything about art and healing, but this is just the luck of having sold a piece to a great collection. This is part of the Heppinger collection. They were a pre-runner of Home Depot. They owned Home Quarters, the Heppinger family, and they owned works by every contemporary artist around, including Claude Oldenburg. And I was excited to be in a collection with Claude Oldenburg, Jim Dine, major artists, and it was shown at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington. So I had to put that in there for you. Going back to some Jewish clay pieces I've done. I had a one-woman show at the Janice Sherrick Gallery, and although they're made of clay, the Hanukkah candles, I think we all remember that box, the old candles, not as beautiful as the ones they've done today, but they kind of, you can smell the wax. And even though this is clay, I still get that feeling when I see them. The piece on the right is my set of tefillin, made from clay, and the Hebrew words spelling the word tefillin are a piece I did that you'll see later where I've done more with Hebrew letters. When I had the opening of the show, a man came up to me and said he wanted to buy the tefillin. And of course I was very excited. And then he went on to tell me that he was a survivor. And when he was 13, he was in the camps and he never had tefillin. So that's why he was drawn to this piece. I have always loved the Hebrew letters, not because I speak the language fluently and not that I read it so fast, but I think the shapes of the letters are just beautiful designs. I created the letters out of clay in reverse, and then I stamped them into the clay surface. I call this my alphabet bowl. It's about 24 inches in width. I wanted to work larger than this, and I remembered working on a paper mache balloon at one time, and using that style of working, I took my old exercise ball that I never used to exercise with that was in my basement, and I covered it with my slabs of clay. And originally, when I first started the piece, it was just the letters. It did not say anything. But remember, I had been involved at the Holocaust Center on these other projects, and somehow I got up the courage to do a Holocaust memorial piece. So the 22 letters of the alphabet surround the piece and represent and spell the names of the 6 million. But the letters in black spell 6 million and Zachor, remember. And the train tracks, I used an old Lionel train set that belonged to my son when he was quite young. I still had the tracks, and I pushed and pressed that into the clay to give that shape. I entered this piece in a show, and it won Best of Show. The theme was Things That Move. And this truly did represent the tracks that took our people to their final destination. The sphere sits on a rail track, and this piece was on exhibit for some time at the Holocaust Center. And one time I came into the building, and sitting on the track were some rocks. And it turned out that the rocks and stones had been brought, someone had gone on a mission to the camps and brought them back. And we do know the tradition of putting a stone to mark visiting a grave. And so this, I still have those stones. It's quite meaningful to me. On a more hopeful note, I was invited with a group of community artists to be part of a teacher's mission sponsored by the Hermel and Davidson Foundation to Israel. Upon returning, we had a gallery exhibit with a mission statement, how to bring Israel back into the classroom. So I created a series of pieces that were all in a box. So this is my sukkah in a box, and I used paint and stencils to create, again, the images of the 7 species. They all fit in the box, and when you open it, it transforms the sukkah into a sacred and festive space. Other pieces I've done are the yad in a box. I have created over 18,000 yad kits that I have sold to schools in the United States, Canada, and Israel. And every few months, I will get an email from someone. It doesn't go to my junk email though. And I won't know who the person is, but it will be an image just like this. And it will say something to the effect, this is what my child created with you, with your kit, to read Torah for their B'nai Mitzvah. So this has been a super, super successful project. And this has inspired other kits that I've done where you DIY, make your own mezuzah, your own Kiddush cup, candlesticks, and most recently, I did the Dreidel Project. Aside from working with beaded projects, I'm doing the sand art kits. And these pieces were actually the outcome of the pandemic because we know in our bank windows, in our grocery stores, we have had the lucite acrylic between us and the cash register. So I work with a person who does my lucite work for me, and he was able to get me pieces of lucite to use for trays. So these are a project that I'm doing now for Passover. And I started this actually last year, and it's very successful. I do workshops in my studio, and I do these in schools as well. I truly believe in the power of art to inspire. And while it is the Judaica collection from Danzig, Poland, that inspired me to create the Judaica, L'Dor V'Dor, it is programs like this that allow me to share my passion for using art to teach, to heal, to engage the community, and in workshops and installations. And this slide here shows in the middle the mosaic that was done for the new lobby of Detroit Children's Hospital of Michigan downtown. It's a 17-foot tall piece, and this was done with patients, visitors, doctors, maintenance people, x-ray technicians. It was truly the whole staff of the hospital and the patients. And the piece on the left, where one of the tigers is signing an artwork that one of the kids made. I was approached by the hospital. The players come as community service to work with the kids, but because of language barriers, a lot of our players are not from here. They wanted them to have an artwork to engage the kids. And this has been very successful. And I recently did actually a project with the Red Wings as well. And the slide on the right, the image on the right on the screen shows one of the schools working on a mosaic that went into the public library. So I've done the gamut of places, and I'm still working full-time, and I'm now available to answer any questions. I'm going to stop my sharing, and anybody that has any questions, I'm happy to engage with.
We have gotten a few questions that have come through via the chat. So let me get to those.
Okay.
The first one is, what kind of companies do you work with for team building?
Well, so I did the Tigers and the Red Wings. I have proposals now. There's a company, Salesforce, which is a big company in the country. You know, everybody does team building, whether it's, you know, the local bank, they want to do something for their staff, or really, there's a lot of team building going on. So Salesforce is an international company. They wanted to know if I would ship out of the country. I said, let's start working in the States first. So they have great imagery to work with. So I have a proposal there. I work with Hadassah chapters, I work with churches, I work with schools. When I work with the schools, it's not only the kids that I work with, but at the end of the year, the PTOs of the public schools, they want to do something for their teachers. I have a proposal out with an insurance company. So everybody, prior to COVID, there was a lot of people went to paint with a twist. So whoever went to paint with a twist, it was the gamut is, men, women, kids, adults, it's all ages. And I also do projects in my studio.
What were the other sites chosen for the Anne Frank trees?
Okay, the Children's Museum in Indianapolis was one of them. Ryan White was the young boy who had the AIDS virus, and he faced a lot of what is the word? A lot of pressure not to attend school because of the virus. And we know that people with AIDS, that they faced a lot of discrimination. So the Indianapolis Museum has an exhibit on him because, again, against hatred and for tolerance and for healing. So that's one of the places that got it. Another place was a school in Arkansas, which was the first school that was integrated. Another one was Sonoma State. There's a woman in Seattle who went to school with Anne Frank, and she applied for one. You have the Clinton Foundation, which does a lot with social justice in Arkansas. They also received one. Trying to think if that's all of them. So the Auschwitz survivor, Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm trying to think what else there was. Now, certain places that applied that did not qualify, like the state of Florida. A horse chestnut tree would not grow in Florida. So places like that, they really couldn't get the tree. So it required, the right temperature. And also you had to do a proposal that would take care of the tree. So it's not just planting the tree. We have our barbed wire, an alarm system around the tree because we don't want vandalism. We had to have an arborist who comes and maintains the tree. It's doing very well with us. Now, one of the trees, one of the sites was flooded and the tree didn't survive. Originally, I think there were like 16 or 17 trees that were sent here, but 11 of them survived. And I don't think that they're all living now. We're very fortunate that ours is flourishing as well as it is.
How would we go about setting up a workshop? Is it in your studio? Where do we do that?
So I'm going to ask you to share my email with people and my contact. I have a studio. It's above my garage. It has a separate entrance through my garage, and it seats up to about 24 people I can have. I've had bridal showers. I've had team building. I've had all kinds of programs here. I even do Bubby Zadie projects because so many of us have grandkids who are out of state. So when they come to visit, it's kind of a fun activity to do. So just email me and we can do that.
If there are any other questions, please submit them via the chat feature. Oh, just saw another one come in. Is there a book about the Kindertransport?
There is the book that I have. This is I'm not sure if I said this in the lecture, but everyone who submitted a quilt square also submitted two to three pages on their stories. So their original stories are written in the book. So the preface of the book gives the history of the Kindertransport, and then you can read their individual stories. I've given this as a bat mitzvah gift. It's a really charming little book, and you can read 1-2 stories at a time. It's not overwhelming to read, but very charming. And I actually have this book available, and the proceeds go back to the Holocaust Center, and they also have it in the gift shop. So.
One of our viewers commented, your passion for challenging others to work together and to express themselves through art exploded on the screen tonight. You have made a difference in bringing art to everyone. Thank you. And another viewer wanted to know, what are you working on right now?
Right now, I just got an order for 50 of the kits, of the Passover kits. I can show these. I'm getting them ready now. bring out the images. So we're doing frogs, we're doing camels, we're doing Jerusalem. So first, the students are doing this as a family project I'm trying to think of what state it is. It's not local. But they ordered 50 kits. I have to think of where it is. So they're making these. I also do I did a new project that is a new challah board project, which is a little bit larger. So I'm doing projects like this in the schools, and I'm always doing my own artwork as well. I actually have a piece here. Okay. This has nothing to do with Judaica, but it's kind of a fun piece. Somebody commissioned me to do a gumball machine. So I do all kinds of imagery, and so when I'm not working on a specific project, then I'm always working on my own sand art. I haven't done clay in quite a while. I actually have a mosaic project. Somebody contacted me that I went to elementary school with, actually. Was I interested in the commission? So I don't know. I'm always working on things like that. So.
Are there any other questions? If so, please submit them via the chat feature or the Q&A feature on Zoom.
I want to thank everybody for coming. Some people I know that came are like my sister and Barbara and a few people that know me. But I told everyone I don't really want to know everybody who's coming because that would make me even more nervous. But I really do thank you for coming, and it's really an honor for me to have this opportunity. So thank you.
We have one more question that just came in. It's, can you send the email address? And yes, when we send out the recording of tonight's program, we will send Gail's contact information so that you can be in touch with her as well. Since I don't see any other questions coming through, I think we will end tonight's program. Gail, thank you so much.
One thing.
Yes.
You asked me what kind of team building things I do. One of the highlight team building things that I've done, I was contacted by the docents of the DIA, and I had a tour of my home and my personal artwork collection, which is mostly mine, but we did a project in the studio also. So I worked with 50 docents, and we did an event where 25 people at a time were up in the studio, and 25 people were being given the tour downstairs, of course, by my sister, who knows me best. And that was a great, it's kind of team building for the docents, and it was a wonderful opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. And I know that everyone really looks forward to getting your contact information tomorrow so that we can all be in touch. And I'm sure a number of people will be scheduling some team building opportunities with you. Thank you everyone for tuning in this evening. And we hope to see you on one of our upcoming programs very soon. Have a great night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.